Just because the transfer window has slammed shut, I say slammed shut, it wouldn't really, it'd smash, wouldn't it? Why would you slam a window? Anyway, just because the transfer window has been gently closed, don't think that there's no West Ham news. No, far from it. There's loads of it. I've just done a little refresh of the browser and whatnot and checked all the latest West Ham news, and there's quite a lot of West Ham stories. Now, one of them that's really caught my attention is the story of Pierre Ekwah. Now, this is really interesting. You may well remember him. We signed him, shall we call it, we poached him from Chelsea's academy because he wanted first-team football. He didn't get first-team football at West Ham, so in the end, we've moved him on to Sunderland. However, he was still with us last season. I might have this wrong. I think we got rid of him in January, if I remember that correctly. I remember watching him on the first game. It was either under 21 or under 23's first game of last season because we featured it on our Patreon channel. We played Arsenal. We got a spanking, quite frankly. We got taught an absolute lesson by Arsenal. And the one player for West Ham that I thought stood out when I did my match report was Pierre Ekwah. You know, the only one that could remotely compete with him. Look, as it turned out, West Ham had an absolutely exceptional season, and we got our revenge come the end of the season because we beat Arsenal to win the FA Youth Cup. However, at the start of the season, we weren't looking too clever. Ekwah looked great, though. And I said, if anyone's going to make the break into the first team this season, it'll be this kid. Well, it never happened. He didn't get his break and he moved to Sunderland because, let's be fair, he moved from Chelsea to West Ham first team football, didn't get any, so he moved to Sunderland for first team football. Now, we have sold him. It's a complete sale. However, we have a buyback clause on the player. And what we also have is, I think, any future sale we get a percentage of. Now, this is really interesting because at the weekend, Sunderland played Southampton in the Championship. The reason that's interesting is because you had Flynn Downs, who is we still retain his registration. He's just on loan from West Ham to Southampton, playing against Sunderland, who, of course, Sunderland has, as I just mentioned, Pierre Ekwah in midfield. Sunderland won 5-0. So, I mean, there's a story in that anyway. Relegated club just come down from the Premier League and they've lost 5-0 away to Sunderland. Ekwah scored twice. I mean, you know, 2 good goals. One of them was an absolute peach. He was outstanding. Everyone was raving about I was going to say about the kid. He's not really a kid, is he? But everyone was raving about him. And Tony Mowbray, who's the manager of Sunderland, revealed after the game that Stuttgart had come in and tried to buy Ekwah just before the start of the season. So I think this is going to be really, really interesting to watch this because there's every possibility that he could turn out to be sort of one of the, or if not the, outstanding midfielder in the Championship this season. So watch this space with that one. We're really interested to see the variation between the two, be it Flynn Downs at Southampton, who I'm sure have just started slowly, a bit of a hangover from relegation, I'm sure. And of course, Pierre Ekwah. Really interested to watch this space on that one. It just goes to show that maybe dropping down to the Championship can really sort of help propel your career, you know, 1 step back to take 2 steps forward, so to speak. The other bit of news is that the Filip Kostic deal very, very nearly happened. So I find that quite interesting. And whether we'll revisit that, I don't know. I mean, he's not getting any younger. Well, clearly, to state the obvious, nobody is. He's not getting any younger between now and January, is he? So I suspect that one won't be happening, but it was quite interesting. There was a really interesting interview in The Athletic with Mohamed Kudus, who said that Tim Steidten, at the point of him signing for West Ham, had given him assurances that Lucas Paqueta wouldn't be a roadblock into Kudus getting into the West Ham team. So just to break that down a bit, Kudus was concerned because Paqueta's such a good player that if he signed for West Ham, he wouldn't get into the team because how would he get in there ahead of Paqueta? The really interesting thing is that Tim Steidten has turned around and Tim Steidten has said, don't worry about this. Don't worry about this at all. You'll still get into the team. 2 things really on there. Firstly, is Tim Steidten really in a position to be guaranteeing that someone will get into the team? I don't know. I would think not. But I'm glad he did it anyway. I really am. Because for too long now, we hear these stories that David Moyes will not guarantee anybody a first-team place. And it's certainly something that Gio said for quite a while. He's like, I just wish Moyes would lie a little bit. The most high-profile example of that is, you remember, Tomori, who was at Chelsea at the time, and West Ham were going to look to sign him. I think it might have been on loan. and he had a phone call with David Moyes, and he wanted assurances that he'd play in the first team, and David Moyes said no. So that came out very publicly. I think since then, I think there's been a lot of other stories where there's been no conversation, it hasn't happened, and it's sort of an easy stick to beat Moyes with. However, there is sort of that lack of a schmooze factor. We call it the schmooze factor. Sometimes you've got to schmooze people. Sometimes you've got to tell them what they want to hear. And I just think with Tim Steidten, maybe he's telling Kudus what he wants to hear. I've seen a couple of people reading stuff into it and what that means in terms of his position where he'll play. So I think the next couple of weeks in terms of David Moyes spending time with the players on the training pitch is going to be really important, because maybe Kudus sees himself as an attacking midfielder, and look at the substitution, which was Paqueta for Kudus at the weekend, would reinforce that. But maybe he's a little bit more versatile and that can play in other positions. That's going to be really interesting to watch and see what happens with that. The other really interesting thing that I noticed was an interview that Vladimir Coufal gave after the game, and the article is in numerous newspapers and websites at the moment. And Coufal had said that David Moyes, before the Luton game, had said, look, after this game, I want to be top of the league again. And I've seen a couple of people say, it's a bit deluded and whatnot. I really like the messaging. I think the messaging is good. I think so you should. I think if you are ever in a position where you are only 3 points off the top of the Premier League, or whatever it was would have taken us there, you should absolutely, your ambition should be to go and win that game. And so I really sort of liked that, actually. It reminded me, I'm not going to bore you with the details of the top of the story lots of times. Reminds me of an old story about Martin O'Neill, which happened years ago, of him just giving really positive messaging and sending out sort of the team with the winner's mentality. I think that's really, really important. There should be no surprise in Moyes. We know that. We've seen that in the press conference. Winning football matches is what I do and all that sort of stuff. He said it to fans. Why would he not say it to players? It makes perfect sense. But the other part of the interview, which I found, again, to be quite fascinating, was the way that Vladimir Coufal spoke about James Ward Prowse. He's now the third player that I've seen speak about Ward Prowse, and all 3 people seem to be in awe with the player's technique. Now, there's a lot of ways to measure technique, isn't there? That technique often gets measured by, tricks and flicks and stuff like that. But I think they're talking about his long range passing and his delivery, his dead ball delivery, and I think Coufal compared him to Juninho and Pirlo, which, I mean, is high praise indeed. He said he's amazing. He's an absolutely amazing player. And as a hell of a start to the Premier League for him, really, to think, 3 assists and a goal. And David Moyes is just going to feel so vindicated with this player now, isn't he? Let's be perfectly honest. I mean, I know I will probably continue to say it. He is far better than I thought he was. He really is. I'm particularly impressed with how he wants to move the ball forward. I know I've mentioned it already. It's just perfect for the way David Moyes wants to play. So I'm really looking forward to actually Kudus getting his way into the team, because I know we got a glimmer, didn't we? We only saw 3 or 4 minutes of him when he came on as a sub. I think it was well into injury time, wasn't it? And he looks rapid, and we've needed someone rapid for a long, long time. So that's really good, and I think it's really promising. And that combination there, I'm really looking forward to seeing, because he will give the ball early. He absolutely will, Ward Prowse. But I just thought it was fascinating, and there's a bit of talk about the England squad, and the fact that Jared Bowen's not in it, and the fact that Ward Prowse is not in it. I think what I would say about that is I wouldn't worry about it too much if I were them. I think they will, if they carry on playing the way they are, they'll get in. There's certainly, I think the midfield is hard anyway. Particularly you've got players like Rice and you've got Bellingham in there. I think no one would have any complaints there. I think when you're looking at Phillips and Henderson, you think, well, hold on a second, maybe not. I don't mind them having another, because they will get 2 weeks on the training pitch, which I think is probably going to be really, really good for them as well, and probably very good for the club. I think eventually they'll force their way in, but I don't think it's any slight on anyone that you're not getting in Southgate's squad at the moment. I think it's a weird squad, and certainly some of the players he's selected players who either aren't playing or just he can't There's no way he can watch, and there's no way anybody can really gauge how competitive the Saudi league is at the moment. Maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, it'll turn out to be a very competitive league, and actually you'll have no worries. It'll be like not worrying if someone's in the Bundesliga or anything like that. But at the moment, they just don't know, and I'm not sure how long players that aren't playing football or players that are playing over there, or in the case of Harry Maguire, players that aren't playing at all, will get to feature in his squad. I don't know. It's a weird old squad, really. But yeah, Bowen's looking sharp. So is James Ward Prowse. We'll talk about the Bowen contract stuff in another video. Look, we've got a couple of weeks of the international break. But there you go. That's only some. That's only some of it. Look, been talking for nearly 11 minutes now, and that's still not all of the West Ham news. But you know what? We're newsworthy. People are going to be talking about West Ham because we're doing really, really well in the league at the moment, and we've got some informed players, and it's happy days, isn't it? Well, great start to the season. I'm absolutely delighted. Really, it's a real buzz, isn't it? It's nice to be able to go and sort of enjoy these next 2 weeks and just talk about these stories and dissect these stories, and watch a bit of international football. I don't watch a ton of it, truth be known, but maybe watch a bit of the international football and just look forward to the next round of games, which are going to be tough. But you can just imagine if we were in this position and a lot of us were dreading that we might only have a couple of points on the board by now. But now we can actually, of course, Man City are going to be a really, really tough game. We've got Liverpool to face as well. These are going to be tough teams, hard teams to play against. But, I think when you've got 10 points on the board, it's a case of, bring it on. Bring it on. Let's have a go. Do you know what I mean? And looking at some of the other results as well, Brighton, I don't know if you watched the game at all, Brighton dismantled Newcastle, and it just makes our win against Brighton look, I think it made it look really, really good, actually. So, yeah, happy days. Look, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.